Hello students, I am Dr. Neema Gupta. My today's topic is industrial dispute. But students, before starting this topic, I would like to discuss that some students they are asking me to make the videos in Hindi also. But it's not possible for me to make the whole video in Hindi. So I will use both type of languages, right? Hindi and English. So I start with the topic. Industrial dispute is what? Basically, it consists of two terms, industry and dispute. Industry means the place where you convert the raw material into finished goods, right? And the place the demand of the customers can be fulfilled by the employer, right? Dispute is what? Dispute is any difference which occurs between employer and employer, between employees and employer, between employees and employees. So, when the dispute happens in the organizations, beta, what happens in case where the employees, those who are working in the organization, when they raise demand to increase their salary, to have a good working conditions, to share the bonus and incentives, suppose if the employer they do not consider it seriously, they do not give all the benefits, right, for which they are asking. So in this case, a difference exists between the employer and the employees. That difference is called the industrial dispute. So industrial dispute are organized protest against existing terms and conditions of the employment, right? What happens in case of industrial dispute? A group of people they organize the protest against the employer, right? And they go for, in order to fulfill their demand, they go for strikes, they go for picketing, they go for घेराव, right? They use these type of ways to put pressure over the employer so that the employer can accept their demand. Now we come to the definitions of the industrial dispute, right? According to the section 2K of Industrial Dispute Act 1947, industrial disputes means any dispute or difference between employers and employees, between employers and employers, between workmen and workmen, right? Which is connected with the employment or non-employment or the terms of employment and conditions of employment of any persons. सो स्टूडेंट्स इसका मतलब क्या है? कोई भी डिफरेंस, कोई भी डिस्प्यूट सेक्शन 2K ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट एक्ट 1947 के अकॉर्डिंग, राइट, जो होता है एम्प्लॉयर एंड एम्प्लॉयर के बीच में. अब आप लोग कहेंगे कि एम्प्लॉयर और एम्प्लॉयर के बीच में कैसा डिस्प्यूट होता है? बेटा, एम्प्लॉयर और एम्प्लॉयर के बीच में जो डिस्प्यूट होता है वो होता है बिजनेस स्ट्रैटेजीज, बिजनेस प्लानिंग को लेके. Suppose in a business there are two partners, one is interested to expand the business, right, and another one is interested to share the profit whatever they have earned, right? So because of these two different goals, because of these two different purpose, they start fighting with each others, they start arguing with each others, right? So such kind of dispute are called the industrial dispute, which exists between the employer and the employer. Another type of dispute which, or the difference which exists between the employer and the employees. Here what type of differences that exist between the employer and employees regarding sharing of bonus, incentives, regarding providing promotional opportunity to the employees, regarding providing fringe benefits, having good working conditions, regarding training and development program. So such kind of differences, because of these all factors, if such kind of differences exist between employer and employees, so this is called the industrial dispute. अब employees and employees के बीच में क्या dispute होता है और difference होता है? That is because of the differences in their salaries. Suppose दो लोग हैं, एक ही designation hold किए हुए हैं, but the first person is getting higher than the another one, definitely they will be having some differences, and that type of differences are called the industrial dispute, right? I hope this definition is clear. Now I move to the next point, right? That the next point, the issues which create dispute between employer and employees are wages, bonus, profit sharing, hours of work, service conditions, etc. that I have already explained in the definitions. Dispute differ from grievance. While grievance focuses on individual, dispute focuses on collectivity of individual. What does it mean? I hope the meaning of grievance is clear to all. I am just giving the brief introduction of the grievance. Grievance is what? It's a imaginary feelings. It's a feeling of dissatisfactions, right, which an employee is having from his employment, right? So grievance is not a dispute, it's not a conflict, it's just a feeling of dissatisfaction which an employee is having, right? This is only related with the particular individual. But in case of dispute, right, when a group of people or group of employees having the same kind of problem, right, it will be considered as the industrial dispute. इसका मतलब ये है कि इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट हम उसे तब बोलेंगे जब वहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोगों की एक ही प्रॉब्लम हो. तो ऐसे डिफरेंसेस, ऐसे डिस्प्यूट को हम इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट कहते हैं. ग्रीवेंस में केवल जो प्रॉब्लम होती है, जो डिससेटिस्फैक्शन की फीलिंग होती है, वो केवल एक इंडिविजुअल से रिलेटेड होती है. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड इज according to section 2A of Industrial Dispute Act 1947, in case of discharge, dismissal, retrenchment, termination of an individual employee, where an employer discharges, dismisses, retrenches of an individual employee or any dispute of an individual connected with that employment shall be deemed to be an industrial dispute. देखो students, before 1965 there was a controversy, there was an argument, right, like whether the individual dispute should be considered as industrial dispute or not, because the people, those who are working in the organization, it doesn't mean that everyone will be having the same problem, right? People are different from each others and everyone will be having their different problems with the organizations, right? So in this case, in 1965, in order to consider this controversy or this argument, section 2A came into existence, right? The government enacted section 2A in Industrial Dispute Act 1947, which clarifies all the doubts, right? And it says that the individual dispute should be considered industrial dispute in a case where the employer, without any notice, without any reason, if he discharges, dismisses, retrenches or terminates the employees from the organization. So such kind of difference, such kind of problem, such kind of issue will be considered as industrial dispute, right? In this case, the employees alone can fight such a case without any support from any other employees or the union, right? In order to raise his voice in front of the employer, he doesn't need any trade union, he doesn't need the support of other employees, those who are working in the organization. Employees will ask for a solution from the employer, right? Suppose if employer is failed to give the solution, to give the remedy to the employees, then in this case, then employee will approach to the conciliation officer. And what the conciliation officer will do, he will listen the problem of the employee and he will give the remedy or the solution to the employee. If solution is not given by the conciliation officer within 45 days from the date he makes an application, then he will approach to the labor court. Now the question arises, what if the issue is not connected to the discharge, dismissal, retrenchment or termination? So students, in that case, an individual dispute can become industrial dispute. Then in this case, suppose the dispute is not related with the dismissal, discharge, retrenchment, then we will move to the first slide, that is what, and we will refer to the section 2K of Industrial Dispute Act 1947. Okay. Now, industrial dispute takes place in several forms, right? There are various forms of industrial dispute in the organization. The first one is a strike. Strike means to refuse to do work by the employees in the organizations, right? Whenever the employees, they put pressure over the employer to accept their demand. If the employer, they do not accept the demand of the employees, the demand may be in form of raising salary, the demand may be in form of sharing bonus and incentives, providing good working conditions, providing training and development program, providing fringe benefits, right? If the employer, they do not fulfill their demand, then the employees go for a strike. They do not work in the organizations, right? In case if we talk about strike, there are various types of strike, like sit down strike, lightning strike, tool down strike, hunger strike, right? These are the forms of the strike, right, through which the employee put pressure over the एम्प्लॉयर. वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में काम नहीं करते हैं, काम करना बंद कर देते हैं, जिससे एम्प्लॉयर के ऊपर प्रेशर आ जाता है, राइट, और वो उनकी डिमांड को फुलफिल करने के लिए रेडी हो जाते हैं. नेक्स्ट इज घेराव. दिस इज अनदर फॉर्म ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल डिस्प्यूट. इट मीन्स टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट द मूवमेंट ऑफ एम्प्लॉयर बाय द वर्कर्स so that they can put pressure on him to accept the demand. In case of Ghirao, what the employees they do, they encircle the employer, right? They do not allow him to move outside, right? Even the employer, they are not allowed to attend the nature's call. So this is illegal, right? In case of Ghirao, जो भी डिसीजन एम्प्लॉयर के द्वारा लिया जाता है एम्प्लॉयज़ के प्रेशर पे, राइट, वो उस डिसीजन को फ्यूचर में डिनाई कर सकता है, बिकॉज द डिसीजन विच इज टेकन बाय द एम्प्लॉयर जस्ट टू सेव हिज लाइफ एट दैट मोमेंट फ्रॉम द एम्प्लॉयज. सो दिस डिसीजन इज नॉट द डिसीजन विच he has to implement in future. He can also deny the decision which he took under the pressure, right? And it's very common in India. Next is picketing. Workers are dissuaded from reporting for work by certain persons standing at the gate of the factory. Means फैक्ट्री के गेट पे कुछ लोग खड़े हो जाते हैं, वो औरों को भी अंदर एंटर नहीं होने देते हैं, राइट. They also ask others to stand at the factory gate, and this is done to just capture the attention of the public. Suppose in case of a strike, what happens? No one is seeing to the employees what the employees are doing inside, right? What demand they are raising from the employer, right? They simply sit in the organization. They stop doing work in the organization in case of a strike. But in case of picketing, they stand at the gate of the factory so that the public can also know what's going inside, right? When the employer, they know that the public are also noticing what's happening in this company, what's happening in this factory, then they get ready to accept their demand. ये सिर्फ लोगों के अटेंशन को कैप्चर करने के लिए की जाती है, जिससे एम्प्लॉयर इस प्रेशर में आ जाए कि कहीं एम्प्लॉयज़ उसकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की गुडविल को ख़त्म ना कर दें. तो in order to save the goodwill of the organization, the employer accept the demand of the employees. Lockout. Lockout means closing of a place of employment by the employer. It's just opposite to strike. In a strike, the employees, they themselves stop working. But in case of lockout, the employer, what it does, it closes down or it shuts the whole organizations for a few days, for a few months, right? Depends on the employee's willingness, right? It is done just to put the pressure over the employees so that the employees can also accept his demand. लॉकआउट में एम्प्लॉयर क्या करता है, पूरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को बंद कर देता है. ये इसलिए किया जाता है जिससे एम्प्लॉयज़ पे प्रेशर आ जाए, क्योंकि एम्प्लॉयज़ अपनी सैलरी के लॉस को बियर नहीं कर सकता लंबे टाइम तक. तो इस केस में एम्प्लॉयज़ के ऊपर दबाव डालता है, जिससे एम्प्लॉयज़ उसकी बात को एक्सेप्ट कर लें, राइट. तो दीज आर द फॉर्म्स ऑफ द इंडस्ट्रियल स्ट्राइक. Now I move to the types of industrial dispute. There are various types of industrial dispute. The first type of industrial dispute is interest dispute, right? Interest dispute takes place when the employees, they raise their voice, right, in order to protect their interests, in order to fulfill their demand from the employer side, or in order to put pressure over the employer so that the employer can accept their demand. The interest of the employees in the organization is increment in the salary, sharing of bonus and profits, and good working conditions, and providing fringe benefits to the employees, job securities, and other benefits also, right? So जब इन सारी इश्यूज को लेकर जब कोई एम्प्लॉयज़ दे गो फॉर स्ट्राइक, राइट, दे गो फॉर घेराव, राइट, दे गो फॉर पिकेटिंग, तो सच काइंड ऑफ डिस्प्यूट और द डिफरेंसेस विच एग्जिस्ट बिटवीन द एम्प्लॉयर एंड द एम्प्लॉयज़ आर कॉल्ड द इंटरेस्ट डिस्प्यूट्स, राइट. अपने इंटरेस्ट को फुलफिल करने के लिए, अपनी डिमांड को एम्प्लॉयर के द्वारा एक्सेप्ट कराने के लिए जो भी डिफरेंसेस एग्जिस्ट करते हैं बिटवीन एम्प्लॉयर एंड एम्प्लॉयज़, ऐसे डिफरेंसेस को हम इंटरेस्ट डिस्प्यूट कहते हैं. नेक्स्ट इज रिकॉग्निशन डिस्प्यूट. In case of recognition dispute, what happens? The trade unions often enter into a dispute with the management during negotiation or collective bargaining for the benefits of the member employees. In order to protect the interests of the employees, what the trade union does, they participate in decision making process, collective bargaining process, so that the decision can also be taken in the favor of the employees, so that the interests of the employees can be protected, right? But what happens, sometimes the employer, they ignore the trade union, right? So they do not consider them as important as they consider their own position, their own authorities, their own work, right? तो उस केस में एम्प्लॉयर ट्रेड यूनियन क्या करते हैं, अपने को रिकग्नाइज कराने के लिए, राइट, वो एक डिफरेंस एग्जिस्ट हो जाता है एम्प्लॉयर और एम्प्लॉयज़ के बीच में. तो ऐसे डिफरेंसेस को हम बोलते हैं रिकॉग्निशन डिस्प्यूट, वेयर द ट्रेड यूनियन फाइट विद द एम्प्लॉयर जस्ट टू गेट रिकॉग्निशन और जस्ट टू बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड बाय देम. तो सच काइंड ऑफ डिस्प्यूट्स आर कॉल्ड द रिकॉग्निशन डिस्प्यूट. Next are rights disputes. The conflict concerning the employees' rights with the management are termed as the right disputes, right? Employees are having many rights in the organization, like he is having a right of promotion, he is having a right of weekly holiday, he is having a right of leaves allowances, he is having a right of extra wages for extra work, also having a right of getting fringe benefits, getting safety measures and job securities. So these are the rights of the employees. So in order to get these rights from the management, they go for strike, they go for picketing, they go for gherav. So such kind of dispute which occurs due to the factors which I have discussed, like promotion, work duration, leaves allowed, overtime, fringe benefits, safety and security. So such type of differences or dispute are called the rights disputes, right? Next is unfair labor practices dispute. These disputes occur when the employer, they do not treat their employees fairly, right? They give the wages irrespective of their capabilities, right? They restrict their communication from the employees, right? They discriminate the employees from themselves, right? And employing new workers at the time of strike, picketing and gherav. So in this case, such type of unfair practices are called the are responsible for creating the differences between the employer and the employees. So the dispute which occurs because of these unfair practices are called the unfair labor practices dispute. So students, this is all about my lecture. Thank you all.